Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm here to talk you through all the books that I read in May. Now that description does come with one exception, and that is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, which I have just started today on May 29th. I will not be talking about it in this wrap-up as I haven't really started it yet, so I don't have fully formed opinions yet. So you will see this again in my June wrap-up once I have read more of it. But I can tell you that I have loved the prologue and chapter 1 that I have read so far, so I really hope that I continue to love it going forward. As to books that I actually did complete, or mostly complete, in May. The first book I read was Devdas by Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay, who is a Bengali author, and this is indeed a Bengali and Indian classic. Bangladesh was still part of India in 1917 when this was written and published. And it follows two young people, Devdas and the girl next door, as it were, Parvati, who is known as Paro. And they grow up inseparable, loving each other, but for various reasons, social and neighborhood politics, I guess you could say, they can never be together. They are pulled apart initially, and then after that, it's all just a case of really poor timing. And it's supposed to be this great love story, and I was really looking forward to reading it, especially so that I could watch the film. I enjoyed it, but not for the reasons that I thought I was going to. I loved what Chattopadhyay was able to do with the female characters. There are two main women in Devdas's life. There's Paro and Chandramukhi, and they both fulfill very different roles in his life. But what they're both able to do is really highlight the impossible positions that women were put in the society at this point. And it was something I didn't expect to see, but I was very pleasantly surprised by it. What I didn't love as much was Devdas himself, which kind of undercut the tragedy. In that Devdas, initially, in his relationship with Paro, I think Chattopadhyay was going for the stereotypical, a boy hits you because he likes you, which of course is not true. But it became even more than that. There was no reason for it. He was downright abusive. And that abusive nature stays with him through adulthood and ultimately leads to self-abuse. He becomes addicted to alcohol and various other vices that are self-destructive. And so that part is still tragic, but his and Paro's status as star-crossed lovers was very undercut by the fact that he's abusive. She shouldn't be with him. I was not cheering for them to get together necessarily. Because of that, I am very intrigued to see how this story was translated onto film in 2002. Which still was a long time ago, but we know far better than this, even by 2002. So I hope that those elements did not make it into the film and that they reframed their relationship, but I have yet to watch it, so I will let you know. The next book I read was The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, which I really enjoyed. It is the story of Mrs. Graham, who comes to Wildfell Hall and really mystifies the rest of the neighborhood, as no one can tell where she's come from, who she was married to. She's behaving, in their eyes, very strangely. And this one young man of the village falls in love with her, but she is refusing his advances every step of the way. And eventually, in the middle of the book, you get to hear from her perspective as to why she has been so mysterious. What is she trying to escape? And honestly, that was the part that I found most fascinating. If you haven't read this, there will be some vague spoilers that I already knew going into it, but it does undercut some of the tension, so if you haven't read it yet, skip ahead a couple moments to the next book. I really enjoyed the central section from Helen's perspective. I found, even though I knew that she was escaping an abusive husband, but I enjoyed being able to watch that descent from her perspective. You really got an insider's look into how people end up in abusive relationships, why they choose to hang on as long as they do when perhaps any outsider would have been urging them to get out ages ago. So that part I really, really enjoyed. I didn't love our narrator as much. He was very whiny, very petty, and honestly, I don't know if he and Helen should have mended their relationship by the end of it. But the middle section I really, really enjoyed. And I'm pleased to say that I enjoyed both of Anne Bronte's books now, and I'm disappointed there aren't any more. At the same time, I have been trying to work my way through The Beautiful and the Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which is a buddy read with Marissa of Blatantly Bookish and Katie of Books and Things. I am currently almost 2/3 of the way through. Well, I'm about halfway through at the moment. I have one more chapter to go to make it to the end of book 2 of 3. This is the story of Anthony Patch, a young writer, man about town. It's never entirely sure what role he fulfills, as he claims to have a job, but very rarely ever does it. And Gloria, a woman who he meets, who he falls desperately in love with, and the story of their life in 1920s New York City. I knew going in that it was going to be fairly autobiographical about F. Scott Fitzgerald's relationship with his wife Zelda, and I knew that their relationship was very tumultuous, so I expected some of that going in, and that is certainly some of what you get. But I'm really struggling with it, more so than I did with The Great Gatsby. Because in The Great Gatsby, I think because you're seeing high society from an outsider's perspective, you can see the hollowness and the shallowness and how meaningless everything is for these people. And yet, because they have nothing else in their lives, they are clinging to it with two hands. And that to me demands some pathos from the reader, some measure of pity. But here I'm not connecting with these characters in that same way. There is no Nick Carraway, there's no Virgil-like figure to guide me into this world. You are dropped into the middle of it. And quite honestly, no one is likable. And while I don't think they're meant to be, not liking them, but not even being able to pity them either, makes for really hard reading. Anthony especially is completely unsympathetic. I find him sexist and racist and completely full of himself. And if that's an autobiographical sketch of F. Scott Fitzgerald, then I'm not sure I like F. Scott Fitzgerald either. So I do intend to finish this because Marissa and Katie have, so I need to keep up with it, but I think I will be donating this out once I am done with it. Next, to distract myself and keep myself upbeat while reading The Beautiful and the Damned, I also read Working on a Song, the lyrics of Hadestown by Anais Mitchell. Hadestown is a wonderful musical. It is one of my favorite musicals of all time. It is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice from Greek mythology, tied in with the Hades and Persephone's myth as well, that also manages to tackle environmentalism, the Trump administration, conservatism, industrialization, all in the most beautiful poetry. And so this book is a bind-up of the lyrics of all of the songs, and thus the entire musical, because the entire musical is sung through. And after each song, Anais Mitchell has written notes about the changes that each song underwent in its various performances and locations, because this play has been in development and touring a variety of countries since 2005, before it finally made it to Broadway in 2019. I love books like this. I love hearing behind the scenes thoughts on musicals like you get with the Hamilton book, or the Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 book, or Come From Away. These lyrics are just extra special, and they continue speaking to any situation that they're put in. Even now, in our current situation and our current political climate, they still inspire a beautiful hope for the future. And that is a true gift. So I would highly encourage you to listen to the musical and then to read this book. And finally, this morning, I finished Clanlands by Sam Heughan and Graham McTavish, which is the companion book to the Starz show Men in Kilts. And this book elaborates on Sam and Graham's adventures. They are both stars of Outlander, and wanted to make a program, and indeed a book, that highlighted various aspects of Scottish culture and Scottish history that are referenced in Outlander, and wanted everyone else to understand those aspects a bit more deeply. And indeed, it was a great push for them to get further in touch with their own Scottish heritage and Scottish roots. I found this book very funny at times. It was very insightful and full of a lot more details and a lot more adventures in general than were in the show. And I'm quite disappointed that a couple of those adventures were not included in the show, but at least you get them here. And their rivalry with one another and the way they phrase things occasionally is very, very funny. My only quibble would be the way that some of these adventures are laid out. It doesn't entirely make sense. It gets a bit rambly at times, and they'll lead into things in their personal lives from a very tenuous connection. But overall, it was still very enjoyable. So if you are at all interested in Scottish culture or Scottish history, or are just a fan of the Outlander books, then I would still recommend this one. So there you have it. Those were the books that I managed to read in the month of May. Do you have any further questions about these books? Are you interested in them yourselves? What did you read this month that was absolutely wonderful and you're desperate to tell everyone to read it? I would love to hear from you, but until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.